So just a few days ago, training camp dates were released for the Jaguars when it comes to when Jaguar fans can show up to open practices. Now, this means two different things. One is that if you guys want to go to one of these open practices, definitely go to the Jaguars website and register. I'm not sure if they cap it anywhere, but you would hate to want to go and all of a sudden you miss out because you missed the deadline to register. And number two, is that football is almost back, and that's really exciting. I know there's different milestones when it comes to before the season starts. For me, football season isn't really here until the Jaguars play their first game, and then we get week in, week out football. But some people say training camp is the start to football season, or some people say that preseason is the start to football season. Me personally, I believe it's not until the regular season. Let me know what you guys think. Where do you guys stand on this whole entire debate? So every year for the longest time, man, I've been going to training camp practices for the Jags. It's super fun time going there, and it really just shows that you get the smell of the football air. You get to see the players playing, the new guys, all that good stuff. But in 2022, we did not get that. The Jaguars had the Miller Electric Center under construction, so the Jaguars practiced at local high school, Episcopal High School, in place of the Jaguars facilities. And because of that, there were no open practices for Jaguars fans. So really, there was a big void missing in my year last year because I'm used to going to these things, and it was weird not to. But it's going to be worth the wait because the Miller Electric Center is set to open at the start of training camp, and that is a $120 million football performance center. It was built upon the demand of Urban Meyer. When Urban Meyer was hired, they said, look, I'll take the job, but we need a football center, so we can start facilitating stuff for the players. And it's the standard around the NFL. So they started building it, but of course, Urban Meyer will not be able to see its completion, as we all know. Now, it will be the first time the Jaguars have really ever had their own space. They're always used to kind of being within the building of the TIAA Bank Field, kind of having their locker room and all that kind of stuff in there. But now this is going to host two different practice fields, outdoor and then one indoor, and it has fan amenity areas there. It has different offices. It's got locker rooms are in there, and also they have weight rooms, and it's really just an all-in-one place where the Jaguars, they have their own football performance center, similar to kind of how colleges do it. Now, the Jags used to do everything inside the stadium, like I said, and even Keenan McCardell, as he was on the Vikings, he kind of called it a dungeon, when you're coaching the Jaguars, because look, when you're inside the stadium, there's not a whole lot of natural light coming in, so it's really just dark. If you guys have ever been inside like a place with no windows, you kind of lose the concept of time, and it's not a very fun area to be at. But now the Jaguars have this center. Now, it's nothing revolutionary. Like most teams in the NFL have this. Jaguars were one of the few teams that were practicing out of their stadium, and a lot of teams have their practice facility like several miles away from their actual stadium. But the cool thing is, it will be at the right next to the Jag Stadium, and I'll be at a couple of the practices, so I'll make sure for those of you that can't be there, and I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there, I'll make sure to vlog it and get the experience, get all the video of different things around it, so it kind of feels like you're there. So I am definitely looking forward to that. Now let's get to the point of the video. Training camp battles. Now, a lot of times you get, really as Jaguar fans, you've gone into the season and there's a lot of competition for starting spots. There's really not a whole lot of competition for starting spots on the Jaguars right now. I mean, look, we're reigning AFC South champions. We're projected to make the playoffs and hopefully make a little bit of a run. And typically teams that are like that, they don't have competitions for roster spots that many, or for starting roster spots open. The Jaguars have a couple, but most of the Jaguars battles have to do more so with depth and like backup positions. So we'll start off, and look, we'll go with left guard. Now, it's easy to say that, okay, left guard, Ben Bartch versus Tyler Shatley, boom, we're set to go. Ben Bartch started the season last year at left guard, but he dislocated his knee in week 6, and then Tyler Shatley came in and started the rest of the year. Tyler Shatley is the king of cleanup duty. He is always He's never a week one starter, but he always winds up getting in the starting lineup when it comes to an interior offensive lineman getting hurt. And Ben Barch, I don't know if he's going to return 100% yet. I know last we heard from Doug Peterson, he said that it's still a little iffy on him. So hopefully he comes back in good strength. But some guys that could compete for the spot would be Cole Van Lanen, who they traded last year in a preseason from the Packers, who was on the roster the whole year. And then also Cooper Hodges. He's an interior lineman that we drafted in the 6th round of the draft. He could be a guy that will compete there. But there's also another layer of intrigue with this battle. Cam Robinson was suspended for the first 4 games of the 2023 NFL season, and Cam Robinson has been the week 1 starting left tackle for the Jaguars every year since 2017. So it's pretty clear what's going to happen here. Anton Harrison, he's going to start at right tackle, and then week 1, Walker Little will start at left tackle. But what happens when Cam Robinson returns from injury? Well, if Walker Little's locking down a left tackle spot and he's just killing it there, I don't see a way that they're going to say, all right, you're Walker Little, you're out, Cam Robinson in, let's run it. I mean, it's probably not going to happen. But you also want your 5 best offensive linemen on the field at the same time. So does Cam Robinson maybe move into left guard? Does he get some reps there during training camp? Is it if Walker Little is doing is he going to get a shot at left guard? This is going to be one of those things where we really need to watch training camp practices and see is Cam Robinson even lining up a left guard. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't, just because, look, he's been playing left tackle like his whole entire life. Like in college, all he played was left tackle. In NFL, all he played is left tackle. Maybe he doesn't slide in there because maybe it's a little uncomfortable for him. Who knows? But that's going to be really a layer of intrigue, is like, look, if Walker Little's killing it, does Cam Robinson play at left guard? It's we'll see week 5, but hopefully Walker Little is killing it, and then they have to make a weird decision on what you're going to do with the most expensive backup lineman of all time. I think he was supposed to make $17 million this year, but I think $1 million is deducted from each game he's missing. So that's going to be like $13 million. So it's a lot of money for a backup, but hey, if something happens to either of our linemen, I'm sure he can slide in. So next up is a tight end. Now, tight end is a weird position because, usually the Jaguars are going to want to keep 4 tight ends on a roster, but there really looks to be only 2 roster locks on the Jaguars. We just re-signed Evan Ingram to a big deal. Excited about that. But we also have tight end Brenton Strange, who was drafted in the 2nd round of the 2023 NFL draft. So those guys are locked solid. Now, some guys that could be competing for the 3rd and 4th tight end spot, which I think the 3rd and 4th tight end spots are both wide open. The guy that's probably leading right now when it comes to making the roster is Luke Farrell, 2021 6th round pick. He's had a few receptions here and there, has had some playing time. So he's a guy that's already familiar with the roster or with the offense and just familiar with the coaching staff. There's also Garrett Prince, who was on the Jaguars practice squad all of last year. There's Jacob Harris. He's a 4th round pick from the Rams in 2021. He's kind of switched between tight end and wide receiver. I think his best shot of making a roster is if he can more commit to the tight end spot. But we'll see with that one. There's Josh Peterson, who is Doug Peterson's son. There's Leonard Taylor, who is an undrafted free agent. And there's also Samus Reyes. So this is one where, look, we'll see in training camp and we'll see in the preseason. Maybe somebody separates themselves from the rest and it turns into an Allen Hurns situation where it's like, yeah, this guy is on the roster. So we'll have to kind of see where that one goes. But yeah, tight end, we're pretty top heavy right now, it seems. So we'll see who can kind of come in late, because it's interesting because, we lost Chris Manhertz last year, but we didn't really replace him with anybody. Could be a little bit concerning, especially in a running game. We're going to need to hopefully like a really good run blocking tight end emerges out of this group, and we're able to kind of roll with that. But we just have to kind of be patient and see. Now, next one, we have wide receiver. Now, some roster locks are Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Jamal Agnew. You would think that the 5th wide receiver spot would be Parker Washington, who is a 6th round pick out of Penn State. He's going to fill that slot role pretty well. But then the last wide receiver spot is up for grabs. I mean, there's Kevin Austin Jr., who was a undrafted free agent from Notre Dame. Really intriguing prospect, but he was extremely raw. So he had a whole entire year to be on the Jags practice squad. So we'll see if he comes back, and we'll see if he has a chance to make the roster this year. There's also Tim Jones, who was on the roster pretty much a whole year last year. He was kind of switching between active and inactive, but he did get some playing time. He did have some receptions last year. And there's also Kendrick Pryor, who the Jaguars snagged off of the waiver wire last year from the Cincinnati Bengals, and he was kind of inactive the whole entire year. So we'll see if we'll get to see him kind of in the preseason for the first time, because we've never actually seen him get any Jaguar snaps, but he was on the roster the whole entire year last year. So the next one is the RB2 spot. Who's going to be running back 2? There's a lot of good candidates here. As we all know, Travis Etienne, excellent running back. He'll be by far the running back 1 to start the year. But who comes in after? I mean, there's Jermichael Hasty, who was the RB2 most of the year last year after James Robinson got traded to the New York Jets. He had some good moments, some maybe not so good moments, but he's a guy that will definitely be on the roster next year. There is Tank Bigsby out of Auburn, who the Jaguars drafted on day 2 in round 3. He's an extremely intriguing guy, but sometimes with these running backs, they like to kind of bring him in slowly. So maybe you see a guy like Jermichael Hasty start the year at RB2, and then they kind of ease Tank Bigsby on in. And then there's also Dearness Johnson, who is a running back from the Browns, who has had some success for the Browns, even though he was kind of in the later in the depth chart when it comes to being behind some good running backs with both Nick Chubb and the Kareem Hunt. So we'll see if he kind of merges out. I do think that Snoop Conner, I don't see Snoop Conner making the roster this year. So I think that these 3 guys that I mentioned will be on the roster, but we'll see who kind of rises the cream of the crop. I mean, I think Hasty probably gets a little bit of look at the beginning, and I think they try to integrate Tank Bigsby in, because after all, 3rd round pick is a pretty significant investment, and we already have a really good running back with ETN, so you got to feel like they have a pretty good plan with Tank Bigsby going forward. Now, next up is the cornerback spot. It seems like we have a pretty big opening at nickel cornerback. I mean, this is a position where a lot of Jaguar fans were saying that cornerback was the number 1 need for the Jaguars, and they really didn't do anything significant to address it. So right now, Tyson Campbell will be starting on the outside, Darius Williams, but nickel cornerback will more than likely be Trey Herndon again. Now, we hope that Trey Herndon has the type of renaissance that like Dewey Wingard had last year, because this time last year, a lot of fans hated Dewey Wingard, but then he went out there and all of a sudden became a fan favorite. We'll see what Trey Herndon does the same. I mean, Trey Herndon's very limited when it comes to just his speed. So there's not a whole lot he can do. Sometimes teams will try to pick on him because he is the weak link of the secondary. But there could be some guys that emerge here. Maybe Antonio Johnson, Christian Braswell, or Eric Hallett the second. They were all day 3 draft picks. So we'll see if one of these guys can beat him. But the coaches all clamor and they love Trey Herndon. So there's more than likely week 1, we're going to see Trey Herndon out there starting at nickel cornerback. So is what it is. Now, those are really the main competitions that I see. I feel like safeties are pretty well locked down. Edge rusher, like I would like there to be more competition, but right now it seems like we could use all the edge rushers that we can right now. I mean, we lost both Arden Key and Dewan Smoot and didn't replace them with anybody. So we're going to have like Jordan Smith step up, like Caleb Von Jason step up. This is a position, especially now that, look, you release some cap space with Evan Ingram re-signing. I really, really think that we need to go out there and look for an edge rusher, sign him to a 1-year deal, give him some money. And because right now, like, I'm not going to forget the last game of the year when we lost to the Chiefs, how we just couldn't get pressure at the end of the game. And, I don't feel like this is a position where we got better. So yeah, edge rusher is one where there's not too much competition, I don't think. And then linebacker is a little bit tricky because linebacker and cornerback, like the end of those roster spots is really about special teams. So that's kind of what's going to happen there. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some battles to make the roster. And then I think special teams are pretty much locked in. Look, we have Brandon McManus at kicker, Logan Cook at punter, Jamal Agnew as punt return, kick return. Not a whole lot more to say about that, but these are some battles that I have going on. Let me know if there are any glaring misses that I have, and really just can't wait for the NFL or for the training camp to start so I can go out there back to Jacksonville and see my Jacksonville Jaguars in action. Let me know what you think of the video. Please drop a like for me if you can. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. We're gearing up for the start of football season. Can't wait to get this channel going again, and can't wait to be here another season with you guys through every Jaguar game. It's going to be an absolute blast. Go Jags.